Have you recently taken up the mantle of Dungeon Master and you're not really sure whether you should be ready to play or run? Then why don't you take a look at these 3 tips before you decide to go out for that pack of smokes and never come back? Realize your party is just happy to be playing. Whether it's running for a new group or whether you're running for an older group and maybe you're taking over for someone else that's no longer wanting to be the dungeon master. Likely your group knows that it's your first time running the game, so they should be very understanding. And if they're not, that's probably something you should discuss with your players. But in my experience, I've always had, if somebody's new coming into that dungeon master role, everybody's very understanding, and more than anything, they're just happy to have someone to run the game so that they can roll their dice. Improvising. Be prepared to improvise. Dungeons and Dragons is an amazing system, especially 5th edition, because of the simplicity. But that simplicity also means that many times your party's going to want to do something, or you're going to encounter something where there isn't necessarily rules already made up for that, or they may not be in those main core books that you own.
Stop acting like you know the way ahead, like you know the rules. There are no rules, man. We're lost.
Now, you could spend 20 minutes looking those rules up, but that really will slow things down, especially if maybe consider you're in an epic combat and you're like, okay, guys, let's pause here and take 30 minutes for me to look up this rule while this dragon or beholder or whatever it is kind of lording over you. Just, I'm gonna hit you eventually. That's not very fun. So if instead you can be prepared and confident in making a ruling on the fly and then looking that up later, and perhaps maybe you find that your homebrew that you came up with is actually a better rule for your party and you stick with that. Either way, the game continues going and you can look that rule up later and then build upon that for the next session. Prep, prep, prep. As much as some players online, especially dungeon masters that have been doing this for a while, will tell you that you shouldn't prep a lot. You should be doing everything on the fly. It makes the game organic. I don't agree, and especially for a new dungeon master, this can be a very stressful situation. When a player asks about like a particular place that's been mentioned earlier on and they want to go there and you realize you haven't prepped anything, well, you don't have NPCs for that area. You don't know what that environment necessarily actually looks like. You don't know anything about that building. But if you prepped, let's say perhaps you didn't even prep that area, but you did do some prep. So you have encounters that you kind of have. You have other buildings that you made. Maybe those things can be adapted. Perhaps that other building that you made over here, well, maybe this building looks very similar to that building on the inside.
Corporate needs you to find the differences between this picture and this picture. They're the same picture.
Or perhaps that encounter that was supposed to happen over there takes place here and it slows your party down so that you're able to prepare that area they want to go to leading into that next session. Regardless of the details, in my opinion, prep is the most important thing for a new dungeon master. And the thing is, prep's going to look a little different depending on the dungeon master and their skills and strengths, and also depending on the group and what they like to particularly get into. A very combat-centric group, you might need to make sure you have plenty of encounters prepared. A very role-playing group, maybe you need to spend a lot of time practicing voices and crafting very unique NPCs for them to interact with. Either way, preparing is going to make your games run much smoother and is going to make it a way less stressful situation for a new DM. If you liked my tips and they helped you out as a new DM, please consider subscribing to the channel and hitting a like below. And if you have some other tips that I didn't mention that you think would be very good for new dungeon masters, consider leaving them in a comment just to help everybody else out. I hope you guys have a good time. Good luck with your rolls.